Welcome to the Reiki Zen Den. I'm here with my dog Bourbon, and he wanted to share a little bit about his story so that we can help other pet parents know that there are other holistic and alternative methods out there to helping your dog on their road to recovery and healing. So a little bit about Bourbon's story. We had him, he was running, let's say, and it was a rainy day, and he went to run up the steps, and he skipped a step and landed spread eagle and left out a huge yelp. So thankfully, my son carried him down the steps for me, got him in the car, and we took him right to the vet. So they confirmed that he did, in fact, severely tear, basically completely, both of his ACLs, or what's called a CCL in dog lingo, and they said that he needed surgery to heal and recover. However, he was only 8 months old at the time, and they would not do surgery on him because his growth platelets were still open in his legs. So they sent me home with an injured dog and said, bring him back when he's a year old, and they would do the surgery. Now, the surgery, mind you, was going to cost $5,000 per leg and 2 months recovery in a crate while he was recovering. And the surgery had to be done one leg at a time. So that would be $10,000 and 4 months of him being in a crate. That doesn't sound like a good solution to me. So I encourage you to go to Spooky2 and download their software just to kind of look around and see if maybe your ailments are in the database, because I bet you they are. So now let's get into it. So the first thing I did with Bourbon is I took the connectors and I hooked him up to the TENS pads. So what I did is I took the TENS pads and I placed them on the inside of his thigh by where his knee is. So right around where the actual ACL or CCL would be located. And then I ran what we call a biofeedback scan. The biofeedback scan in the database, what it does is it sends electromagnetic frequencies into your electromagnetic field within your body. Anything that is not supposed to be there, it calls a hit. So it records up to 10 hits per biofeedback scan. It takes about 5 or 6 minutes, and boom, you have your results. So then, once I record and save those hits, I turn around and I switch it to contact mode, keeping the TENS pads in the exact same spot that I just ran the biofeedback scan. And then I run a 30-minute contact session for him. Now, he feels so amazing when he's getting these frequencies that if I'm in messing with the Rife therapy machine and getting something ready maybe for myself or a client, he will actually come over and be like, hey, thinking he's going to get a session. That's how much he loves it, because he knows it's making him feel better.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Esoteric Atlanta. Of course, my name is Bryce. I hope you guys are having a wonderful start to your week. Once again, I would like to thank every single person who has reached out to me regarding all this nonsense with my hard work, my actually more like 18 years of hard work being stolen and plagiarized. Unfortunately, when you are on the path of trying, the initiate's path of trying to do what's best for yourself and help others, most of the time, if you are on that right path, your work will be stolen, and it will be, there's always going to be a negative entity following you trying to corrupt what you're doing. So to kind of make light of the situation, at least I can say this is par for the course. And the good news is the person that has written this book does not have a huge following. So not many people are hopefully going to be affected by her stealing my work, writing a book based on my work, and then in the book itself not even getting it right, if that makes sense. But I do thank you guys for reaching out to me. With that being said, we are trying to handle it legally. So we are trying to reach out to all the other people that were also plagiarized. So it's all good, you guys. But I just wanted to give you guys a huge thank you who reached out to me. If you don't know what I'm referring to, don't worry about it. I can't say anything more because this is going to end up being a legal issue. So, but just thank you guys so much for all the support. It means the world to me. But nonetheless, what we're going to talk about today, I wanted to take some episodes, just kind of some laid back episodes, not really deep dive episodes, to kind of look through the Cassiopaean board with you guys and discuss some of these topics that the Cassiopaeans have spoken about over the last, 30 years. They've been channeled for 30 years now, and they've yet to get anything wrong. And so it's absolutely fascinating. And the Cassiopaeans do go off of the template of the law of one, meaning that they are talking about the polarity between service to self or service to others. So in any of their channeling, when you see STS, that means service to self, or if you see STO, that means service to others. Now, again, for those who are unfamiliar with the law of one, right now we are on a third density planet. And so third density, basically, there's a point, right? There's a point for each a density, an achievement, something you're trying to achieve before you go to the next density. And for third density, the point of third density is choice. So when we are on third density, this is the last stop before there's a fork in the road, okay? So third density is the last stop where both service to self entities and service to other beings can coexist. Once you've made that choice, whether you want to go service to self or service to others, you either go to a 4D negative planet or a 4D positive planet. Negative would be service to self, positive would be service to others. This density is for you to make that choice, which path that you're going to take. And I think even just knowing that information is enough to help you not be duped by a lot of this junk conspiracy, because junk conspiracy is created by the 4D negative entities, and I'll get to that, why they do that in a minute. It makes perfect sense once you understand it. So when you see people on YouTube or on any of the social media platforms saying, oh, the evil ones are off the earth right now, they're not here anymore, that's not true. Okay, that's not true. Okay, and by trying to get you to believe that, that's getting you to rest in your laurels, which is going to derail you from your work. We're still in third density. And so because we're still in third density, both sides of the polarity have a right to be here. Okay, because that polarity is what's causing the opposing force, which is what's causing the friction, which is giving you the opportunity to make that choice. Hope that makes sense. Okay, if that doesn't make sense, we can do a deeper discussion into the law of one. So right now we are still in third density. This planet, planet Earth, is supposed to go fourth density positive. So not only are we, the inhabitants of this planet, about to be what they call harvested, but the earth itself as a living being is also in the process of being harvested. So the earth itself is going to be bumping up to 4D positive. So what this means is that every person on planet Earth who has made the choice to do service to self, go 4D negative, or people who are still in the gray, who haven't made that choice yet, they will have to leave the planet once we go up to 4D positive, because they can no longer inhabit planet Earth, right? They have to go to another planet. The people who are still third density have to go to another third density planet. I think that kind of is self-explanatory and makes sense. And, God or the powers that be, they don't really, it's up to you where you go, right? Time is eternal. There's no finish line. There's no, it's just up to you and which choices karmic choices you make as to what path you're going to take. That they both of the densities end up leading back to the one. So that's why it's called the law of one. So literally it's just up to you and what experience that you want. Well, let me talk a little bit about 4D service to self. So the fourth density service to self entities, which we would probably classify more as like like demons. If you know, that might be something people might call a fourth density negative entity. An angel might be a positive service to other entity. That might be a vocabulary word that some people use for this. Well, something you have to remember as well, when it comes to us being on third density, because this is the density of choice, third density, it's also the density of free will. And because of that, because of this, the rules of the game here, of the journey on planet Earth, we are the only density where we go through the veil of amnesia. So we are the only density in which there is a quantum, in which there is an astral. We're the only density in which we come into the existence not remembering anything. This is for a very specific purpose. If you study the law of one, they talk about how eons ago in third density there was no veil and people went really slow with their work. And so they had to they had to drop a veil over third density to force people in third density to get uncomfortable. So they would have to go down the journey of choice. Okay. So in third density, we're the only beings that have a veil. We come into this planet not remembering things for a very specific reason, so that we can get uncomfortable and find the friction needed in order to get on the initiate's path to decide which path we're actually going to take back to the one. So because we have to go through this, according to the law of one, which I happen to very much believe, positive beings will not intervene. So positive beings who are on service to other path, they're not going to intervene in your journey, because if they intervene, that could derail you. That could take you away from the lessons, the karmic lessons that you decided to work on in this journey. So your soul, before taking your incarnation, designed your whole experience. Everything you were going to go through, all the trials and tribulations that were going to come your way, your soul uniquely designed that experience so that you would get uncomfortable. You and your lower self, so your lower self is your karmic self, would have to get uncomfortable and therefore shift and make changes. Yeah, it's the only way that Christ consciousness rises. That's the only way Kundalini rises up Sushumna, is that there is an uncomfortable awareness that forces you to go through change. And again, third density is not supposed to be comfortable. You didn't come here to lay around eating bonbons, watching Keeping Up with the Kardashians. You came here to literally train for a marathon, to run a marathon, right? It's not supposed to be comfortable. So these higher density positive beings, when they see that you are in the suffering that your soul agreed to, that your soul planned for your lower self, they're not going to intervene, because that was your training program, right? That was the training program, the course that you picked for yourself. So they're not going to step in and intervene to get you off course, even if you are uncomfortable, because they know, as well as your higher self, your soul knows, you came here to do that. All right. But 4D negative beings will always intervene. And the reason why they're always going to intervene is because darkness cannot create anything. Only the light can create. So entities that have picked to go to the service to self path have to feed off of you, right? They cannot sustain life themselves. Just like a lot of people who are meat eaters, so like on our planet, people who choose to eat meat, that's a service to self-choice, because you are relying on a second density being. So animals are what's considered second density. You are relying on the life force of a second density being to give you life in this on this planet. So being a meat eater is a service to self-choice, right? Now, to go service to others, you have to be 51% service to others. So you have 49% of you where there can be some wiggle room. So just because you are a meat eater possibly doesn't mean necessarily that you might still go service to others, even if you are a meat eater, if the rest of you is working to help humanity and is empathetic to other beings. However, it is a service to self act to eat meat, because you're feeding off of something, you're stealing the life force of another sentient being in order to fuel your own life force. But that's what 4D negative does off of us. So people who hunt animals and eat animal meat on Earth, that's the same thing that the 4D negatives are doing to us, right? Now, 4D beings, from my understanding, both positive and negative, feed differently than we do. They feed almost through osmosis through the skin. So when we talk about like demons feeding off of the loosh, like sucking off the loosh off the body, that's more of how both sides eat, except for on the positive side, they're not feeding off of anything that is, they're not feeding off of sentient beings, right? So they're nourishing themselves through their skin, basically, of things that aren't not non-living things, right? Like, you know, like people who are plant-based, you know, I'm pretty much plant-based. Like I eat mostly of one density beings, which is not, when you're in first density, you don't have self-awareness, so it's a different level of consciousness, right? So, and again, the law of one goes into this into great detail, so I would highly suggest getting it and reading it for yourself. So think about that. To make a long story short, fourth density beings have to feed off of us. They have to in order to sustain their life, because they cannot generate that life force by themselves. So when they see a third density planet where people are trying to make that choice, they're always going to come in and intervene because they want to take you off your path. So if you are on a path that is leading you to service to others, they're going to try to come in and create chaos and feed into your ego in order to pull you off that path. And from what I understand, my understanding is what they're trying to do is get you into to keep you in limbo in third density, so that you can't graduate to the next density, because they can keep you in third density for eternity. Then they have substance, right? You're their grocery store, right? And so again, they do that. Sometimes they do that. We have things like, what I experience a lot is I'll be terrorized, right? Like I'll have attacks where I'm terrorized. But for a lot of people, what they do is they will try to get you in your ego. And so we see this a lot with things like divination. And I've already done lots of videos on, like, guys, put your pendulums down. Your pendulums are not telling you the value of anybody else's soul. It's just reading your thoughts, right? Because a service to self, another service to self tactic or negative side tactic, is a pecking order. So a service to self entity would be something that has a pecking order. So basically, like our whole matrix, where we have the haves and the have-nots, we have government officials, we have monarchy. This is all service to self. This is all negatively polarized pecking order. Where else do we also see this? We see this also in a lot of religions. Religions have pecking orders. Any religion that has a prophet is a negatively polarized religion. Because as Yahshua taught, as all of the service to other beings taught, there is no pecking order. Every single human being is equal in the eyes of God. And if you're having visions or you're getting information, it could just be for you. But the minute we think we're getting visions, or we think we're getting downloads, and we think we have to share them with other people, and use that as some tool to boss people around, or pretend like for some reason we're more spiritually valuable than the next person, that's when we start to polarize negative. Okay, I hope that makes sense. So I am seeing this a lot in the quote unquote truther community. Okay, and it makes sense, right? Because we've been conditioned from the time we were born. We've been conditioned in most cultures to have a pecking order. We've been conditioned to believe a prophet. We've been conditioned to believe our rabbi, or to believe our preacher. And I do think preachers and rabbis have a place, like teachers have a place. Teachers are not prophets. Like, teachers are there to help you. You need a teacher. You need somebody to help you see your blind spots and to teach you the information. But the teacher always has many tasks at hand. And one of the teacher's tasks at hand is to eventually teach themselves out of a job. A teacher's job is also not to interrupt you from your karma. So the teacher can, like, try to talk to you about considering certain possibilities and considering your ego and your blind spots, but the teacher eventually has to back off and let you experience your karma. So the teacher is not a prophet, yeah? The teacher is just somebody that's been working through this longer than you. Yeah. So, and again, a lot of these teachers come from ancient lineages, like my lineage, the Ashtanga lineage, where we have all these ancient scriptures that were written thousands of years ago, so that when we come back to Earth without any memory, these old ancient scriptures give us a path back home. Okay. And so, again, very different from a prophet, where a prophet is saying, thou shalt not, and do what I say. I mean, look at the Chad Daybell and Lori Vallow case. That's, well, Lori Vallow case has already happened. The Chad Daybell case is currently happening right now, where he is literally on trial for his life because he thought he was a prophet and he thought he was special, and he was swinging that pendulum, and that pendulum was telling him if people had dark or light souls, and the people who had dark souls, he for some reason felt like he had the power to then unalive these people. And that is what's so terrifying to me, because I'm seeing this all over the truther community, where people in the truther community are following particular YouTubers or divinators, thinking for some reason that these people have special access to future events that nobody else has. And what's happening is that everybody's getting pulled off track. And so a while ago, the Cassiopaeans did say that only like 3% of humanity at this point is actually going to make it to fourth density positive, because so many people have been pulled off of their track. And so this is why I thought maybe we should just start looking through some of the Cassiopaean work, not in a deep dive way, just look at it. So hopefully, if you're seeing this video, hopefully you can go and take some time to like read through the Cassiopaeans, read Laura Knight's books, like really educate yourself on these different polarities, because the powers that be in this world are working the law of one. So the bad guys of this world understand the law of one, and they're praying that you don't, so that they can keep you in third density. Okay, that makes sense. All right, so with that being said, a disclaimer again before we look at some of these Cassiopaean readings. If you want to start to read the Cassiopaeans, I'm going to put all the links down in the description box below so you have that information at your fingertips. I would highly, highly, highly suggest that before you dive deeply into the Cassiopaean work, the Cassiopaean Board, it's not a blog, it's a board, that you first read Laura Knight's book series, Riding the Wave. Now, all of Laura Knight's book series, including the Law of One, the raw material, which isn't Laura Knight's books, but they're kind of, they go hand in hand. They're all in my Amazon affiliate link. If you just follow the link in the description box below, you'll go to my link, you'll see books used on the show, all that kind of stuff. I have them all kind of together in that section so that you can see where all the books are. Now, I'm not saying you have to purchase from my affiliate link. If you do, it does help me out a little bit. I get a little bit of percentage back, but you don't have to do that. In fact, you can find some of the Law of One works, all that stuff. You can find a lot of the stuff PDFs online if you wanted to go that route as well. So don't feel like you have to buy from me. Again, it does help me out if you do, but you don't have to. But that link is down there. Even if you don't use Amazon, the Amazon affiliate link, you can still go to that my Amazon affiliate link and see all the books. So you can write down their titles and you know exactly which books it is that I'm referring to when I talk about the Cassiopaeans or the Law of One, if that makes sense. So don't feel obligated, but all that information is down there. And so Laura Knight, in her books, Riding the Wave series, she talks about who the Cassiopaeans are, what the purpose of this is, so that you have a more thorough understanding and you know how to read the board. Because one of the most confusing things about reading the Cassiopaean board, and I totally respect Laura Knight for doing this. I mean, I have a lot of Laura Knight's books anyway. Like, this is one of Laura Knight's books. She's an incredible researcher apart from the Cassiopaeans. She's an incredible truther, if you will, discloser, if you will, over like true history. So I have a total respect for Laura Knight. But the one thing that's super confusing, especially when you're new to the Cassiopaeans, and again, even though this is confusing, I respect Laura for doing this. She literally, or her transcriber, who's ever transcribing this, literally writes everything down. So somebody could like cough in the room or say something off topic, and they're going to write it down. Okay, which I totally respect that, because they aren't hiding anything. But just understand that everything going on in that room is getting transcribed on this board, so you see everything that's being said. If that makes sense. So I do again, I'm going to put links to the board down in the description box below, but I would highly recommend reading the book series first so that you have a better, more thorough understanding of how they're actually doing this, how they're actually communicating with the Cassiopaeans, who the Cassiopaeans are, all that kind of stuff. No, the Cassiopaeans are not extraterrestrials. They're not extraterrestrials. They're literally us from the future. They're us from the future. They're not our higher selves either. This is one thing I wanted to cover as well. And this might be very confusing. And again, if what I'm about to say confuses you, I would once again recommend reading The Law of One. It's in my affiliate link. And B, I would absolutely recommend going back to Spirituality 101. So go back to the kindergarten base level of spirituality and learn about the Shiva and the Shakti, the soul and the body. So I want to reiterate that your soul is not your body. Your identity, so me as Bryce, that's not my soul. Bryce is just an experience for my soul in this life, okay? And that's often extremely confusing for people when they first start their spiritual journey because of that veil of amnesia. Even Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, that's in the affiliate link. Again, I would highly suggest reading that as well because that's all about the Shiva and the Shakti, or Prakriti and Purusha, which Purusha and the Shiva are the same thing. Prakriti and Shakti are the same thing. It talks all about the dynamics between the two, and that man suffers. Basically, Patanjali theorizes. Patanjali was a scientist, and in the Yoga Sutra, he theorizes that man suffers because who man thinks he is not actually who he is. So who I think I am is Bryce, and Bryce is mortal. So therefore, my suffering comes from the fact that Bryce is not going to live forever. So that's where the human condition comes from. But in reality, Bryce is just an experience for my soul in this moment. It's like when you go to an amusement park and you get to pick the roller coaster that you want to get on. So like at Six Flags over Georgia, I don't know if they still have this ride. I haven't been there in a really long time, but they had a roller coaster at one point, possibly still, called the Superman ride. And they would strap you in and you literally would hang, like your chest would face the ground and your arms would go out and your legs would go out. And so it was simulating you flying. So in that moment, you got in line, you stood in line for like 3 hours to take a 15-minute roller coaster ride where you got to experience the simulation of flying. Now, you know that this isn't real. Even though you're feeling all the adrenaline of flying, you have that simulation, but you know that it's just a ride, that you're not, and it's going to end and you're going to get off and you're going to go to the next ride, which creates a whole new simulation, right? So that's what the lives are like. So your soul is basically like in an amusement park, picking which simulated experience, which karmic experience you want to experience to refine yourself. So your soul knows, my soul knows that Bryce is just the Superman ride for this life. I signed up for it. I wanted to experience it, but I'm going to get off the ride at some point and it will be on to the next one. But so many people most people confuse themselves for the ride. They think the ride is really who they are. They think that the Superman ride, the actual roller coaster, is who they are, and they don't realize that they're the soul that's strapped into the roller coaster just experiencing the ride. I hope that makes sense. So the same thing with your higher self. Again, your higher self, one thing that drives me crazy and I see is such spiritual abuse, this is a huge red flag for me, is when people want to divinate on other people and they say, well, I asked their higher self and their higher self said yes. No, you guys, your higher self is not experiencing karma. Your higher self cannot intervene. Your higher self can't intervene. So your higher self is not going to answer for you. And if you're doing anything where you think you're talking to your higher self, I would beg you to consider the possibility that you are talking to a fourth density negative being who's manipulating you. We're going to get to that in a minute, which will hopefully give you some clarity on what I'm talking about. So your higher self, everybody's higher self, sits in fifth density. Okay, now remember, I'm saying density, I'm not saying dimensions. I'm very weary of the whole dimensional thing. To me, that's pop spirituality. That's more contrived spirituality, not real spirituality. So I'm saying density. So your soul, your higher self, anchors in fifth density. Now, if you've had any studies of spiritual texts, like again, this is Spirituality 101, so this is kindergarten level spirituality, you know that your soul is Purusha, or the Shiva, and its job is literally to just observe. It translates to the watcher or the seer. Prakriti, or Shakti, the nature, the creation, the body is the watchable or the seeable. So your higher self that's anchored in fifth density, like a core to you in this lower third density, all your higher self is doing is observing. It's not intervening because it already worked this out with you. And it already agreed with you that you were going to go through certain experiences like the Superman ride to teach you things. So it's going to back up and just watch. Now, think about that amusement park again. Now, think about being at an amusement park and you're watching. You're sitting there watching people on the Superman ride, the roller coaster. You hear them screaming, you hear their adrenaline pumping, you see the hands going up. Are you going to go because you hear them screaming? Are you going to run to the person controlling the ride and demand the person controlling the ride stop the ride because they're screaming on the ride? No, no, because you know it's a ride. And you know that eventually the ride's going to end and they're going to get unstrapped and they're going to go off to the next ride. So all you're going to do is just sit back with a little smile on your face and just watch them take the ride. That's your higher self. So if your higher self, if you think your higher self is going to intervene, it's not. I would beg you to really study this because that's not its point. The point of the higher self is just to observe what you have already agreed to go through. Okay. So again, I would just really beg you to consider if you are doing anything with your higher self, that maybe it's not your higher self. It's probably a fourth density negative being who's pulling you off track. And so I would really, really, really beg you to consider starting from the beginning and learning the foundation of spirituality first so that you're not tricked, right? Because these fourth density negative beings are tricksters. And again, this is the baseline. If you've never heard the term Shakti before, but you think you're on a spiritual path, I would beg you to reconsider because honestly, you guys, Shakti is like, that's like knowing the letter A is the beginning of the English alphabet for anybody on a spiritual path. So if you don't know what that is, you've been completely misled and you've been completely duped. All right. Because Shakti is like a baseline. Like that's what you learn on your first day at spiritual school. That the Shiva is the soul, the body is the Shakti or the Purusha and the Prakriti. The Shakti or the Prakriti, the life, is the roller coaster that your soul picked and created for this simulated experience. And if you're confusing the two, if you think that your simulated experience is your soul or is who you are eternally, then you are way off base. And so I would just beg you to back up, rewind, back up, and go all the way back to the beginning. I know a lot of people also in the ego, they don't want to be beginners. And that's very sad to me when I see people who try to jump to the end of the line and they end up hurting people. So if if you don't want to be a beginner, you're going to end up hurting people. And so I would highly suggest, I had to be a beginner for a while. Everybody has to be a beginner, right? There's nothing wrong with being a beginner. Being a beginner is the best part because in a beginner's mind, there's multiple experiences and opportunities. In an advanced person's mind, there are a few. So I would say enjoy being a beginner. I love when I get to do things that I'm new at. Like when I first started doing bar after years of being in this Ashtanga world and being the only female authorized here in the state of Georgia, I got to be a beginner again when I started practicing bar. And it was so fun to be a beginner. It was so fun to be like new at something and to get to learn something for the first time. So don't ever, if you find yourself trying to escape the beginning stages, then that's your ego, darling. Like that's just your ego. And just know that it's okay to be a beginner, right? It's totally fine. So anyway, I hope that kind of makes sense. Again, if you're kind of confused by that, it's a very long there's a lot to it, so I would highly suggest you need a teacher. You absolutely, everybody, if you're doing any type of healing work whatsoever and you don't have a teacher, you're in danger because you need somebody that you can be accountable to. I'm in this 18 years and I still have a teacher. Yeshua, the Christ had a teacher for 30 years. So if Yeshua had a teacher, an actual human being who was his teacher, you most certainly need a teacher. Okay, so please, please, please. All right, so with that being said, let's go and look at some of the Cassiopaean readings. So as you guys know, we've been talking a lot about Joseph Smith and Mormonism. And I remembered that they did talk about Joseph Smith. And so this morning I was like, why don't I do a little quick video and talk about Joseph Smith? Because he basically like according to them, Joseph Smith was like tricked by a bunch of Lizzies, a bunch of fourth density negative being, which makes sense to me. But when I read through the form, when I Googled it and I read through the form, I realized there is so much more here. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about all this spiritual divination we're seeing now in the truther community, which I love a good tarot card reading, don't get me wrong, but we have to remember that to take it all with a grain of salt, because more than likely it's probably a negative entity that's trying to derail you. Okay, so I just wanted to look at this for a minute with you guys. So this was session on the 16th of October 1994. So again, they've been doing this for like 30 years. All right. So we start with Moses. And if you guys remember previously, we spoke about Moses because Moses was spoken about in the Law of One. And the Law of One states the same things that the Cassiopaeans are going to state here, that Moses started off service to others, but got manipulated by his own ego and by fourth density negative beings and became service to self. So Moses also had a 3D service to self to 6D service to other connection initially. So over time, Moses has been able to work himself back to the positive side, but when he was on earth, he absolutely went negative. So where did Moses get his knowledge? And the Cassiopaeans, that's Laura, she asked that question, and they say us. At some stage, Moses was corrupted by imagery. The same session continues. Question from Laura. Okay, you told us before that he saw or interacted with a holographic projection created by the lizard beings. Was that the experience on Mount Sinai? Answer, yes. Laura, question. Okay, well, if he got knowledge from you, did he get this prior to the interactions with the lizard beings? Yes, he was corrupted by imagery. He was deceived by imagery, a la Joseph Smith, for example. So here's where we see the mention of Joseph Smith, comparing the situation with Joseph Smith to Moses. So again, they're saying Moses started off on the right path. How many people in the truther community started off on the right path? They woke up, they became aware of all the corruption in the world, they started to get themselves on the right path, where all of a sudden they got corrupted themselves again and pulled right back over to the negative path, even though now more potent because they have that knowledge now to begin with. So now they're going negative by following these divinators, by the violence we see in the truther community, all that kind of stuff. So it's the same thing, you guys. So basically, Joseph Smith, all the prophecies that Joseph Smith, his visions, all that kind of stuff, the golden plates, Moroni, they might talk about Moroni here. That was all lizard beings manipulating him. And you can tell because Mormonism, if you know the Law of One, Mormonism, like all sects of Christianity, is a service to self, a negatively polarized religion. Okay? Not saying that Yahshua was service to others. Yahshua was not. But the religion was service to self. Look at Mormonism. Like in Mormonism, you can't even go to the temple unless you get a temple recommended by a bishop who's another human being. If that ain't a pecking order, I don't know what is. Okay, so Mormonism is extremely service to self, negatively polarized. Okay. Are you saying, so question, Laura, are you saying that Joseph Smith, the recipient of the Mormon text, was deceived by the lizards also? Answer, yes, they do that a lot. They do that a lot. All right. So let's okay, so as a follow-up to the question about Moses, if Moses was misled by the Lizzies, how did he get to be a good guy? All right. So question, Laura, who was the God that spoke to Moses on the mount? Answer, audible projection of lizards. At some point they also talk about the burning bush that Moses saw was also lizards. All right. Question, Laura. Did Moses at any time realize that he was being duped by the Lizzies? Answer, no. All right. So it goes on to say how Moses, once he left this life, how he fixed himself basically and got back on the right path. But I just wanted you guys to take that in, that if these big people that you've been taught to venerate were being duped by lizard people, by fourth density negative beings, then is it possible? Is it possible that you're also being duped? Is it possible? I think it is. Okay. So this just is very humbling for me anyway. This has been very humbling to read this, to remind myself that they are constantly going to be trying to pick at you and get you to either not polarize or go negative. All right. It is important to point. It is an important point because it signifies that even if a person is deceived while in the body, okay, yeah, you guys can look further into that on your own. I'll put the link below. So both projections of men and women are possible in the case of Joan of Arc. So this is session 25, October 1994. Laura, a question, Laura, who appeared to Joan of Arc? Answered, lizard projection. In 1428, she requested to be taken to Charles, later testifying that she was guided by visions of Archangel Michael and Saint Margaret and Saint Catherine. Apparitions of the Virgin Mary are well known. Session 16, November 1994, or the 16th of November 1994. Question, Laura, what or who has been causing the apparitions of the Virgin Marys at Conyers in Georgia? That's near where I live, actually. Deceptive fields. What energy is behind this? Lizards. Laura, question, why? Answer, confusion can paint part of bigger picture and plan. Question, Laura, what is the bigger picture and plan? A, conquest. Laura, question, how will that aid their conquest? Answer, by dispersing, knowledge. Question, Laura, dispersing as in breaking apart or scattering? Answer, spreading thin, confusion does this. You are being bombarded with confusion in this era. So session 11, January 1995. Question, Barry now. Are the lizards behind any of the apparitions of the Virgin Mary around the world? Answer, yes, all of them. Every vision of the apparition of Mary is caused by the 4D negative. 4Ds they're mass manipulators. They can appear to be positive and they're not. All right. Question, Barry, what is the purpose behind this? Diversion and disinformation so that knowledge will be dispersed. Therefore, more will be open to attack. Question, Laura, if you think about it, propagating belief in the old-time religions, which include belief in hell or purgatory, tend to put a person in a very vulnerable position because then they are open to thoughts of guilt, sin, and therefore susceptible to thought control and terror. Answer, yes. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there because then it goes into more like the Kentuckian stuff, which is super fascinating as well, and I will leave you to research that for yourself. I would like to do this more. I would like to go through the Cassiopaean reading and the Law of One to kind of look at these things, again, just for us to like check ourselves, right? For me to check myself. Sometimes we think we're on the right path, but we have to always kind of go back into ourselves and be like, am I being deceived? Am I being deceived? Am I being deceived? And, you know, I don't want to cause any more confusion. If you're not sure if you're being deceived or not, just ask yourself the simple questions. Is this a pecking order? Is this me giving my power away to someone else, be it Trump, be it the white hats, be it a YouTuber? Am I not taking care of myself? Am I putting people beneath me or above me in value? Am I acting like I'm in a cult? Like all these things can help check where you are. And yeah, and then just make sure that you're still following, despite the confusion, that you're still following the service to others path. And again, knowledge is power. As the Cassiopaeans say, knowledge is power, knowledge protects, and knowledge is infinite. We're never done knowing. And in fact, third density is not the density of knowing. So we're never going to know it all. We're never going to know it all in third density. And even if you think you're a wanderer, even if you think you might be a soul that's come down from like sixth density to help out, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because even if you are a wanderer, you agreed to the laws of third density. So if you walk around with this big ego thinking you're an ascended master or you're a wanderer and therefore you're better than anybody else, guess what, my friends? You're going to get stuck in the karmic loop of third density again. So even if you are a wanderer, you have to bring yourself back down to earth, back down to reality. If you find yourself divinating all the time, if you find yourself stuck in this world of swinging your pendulum all the time, I would ask too, or if you find yourself obsessed with your past lives, I would ask you too, why are you disassociating from this life? You need to be here. In spirituality is about being here now, not there then. Okay? It's here now, not there then. Here now. So you need to experience the karma that you came here to experience within the body that you're living in now. All right? You can't hop mid-ride. You can't hop from the Superman ride mid-ride over to the lazy river ride, right? You have to be in the Superman ride for the duration of the Superman ride. Okay? So I would just ask, and I have to ask myself the same questions when I find myself like reading my tarot cards too much, or I have to ask myself like, okay, snap out of it, Bryce. Like, you're here, you got to be Bryce. You got to be Bryce. And listen, guys, I said this before, there's a lot about third density that's fucking awesome. Yeah, we got this nasty polarity business going on, but man, have you seen the sunsets here? They're gorgeous. Have you seen the sunrises here? They're gorgeous, right? Food here, like there's amazing food to be tasted. There's beautiful smelling flowers to smell. Don't wish this life away. Don't wish this experience away. Be here now. Because remember, in fourth density, like some of the stuff that delight your senses here in third density are not going to exist in fourth density. You're not going to be able to lick an ice cream cone in fourth density, right? You're going to be eating through osmosis. So enjoy being here now. If you spend so much time trying to disassociate from the here now, that's a surefire way to get you another ticket back on this ride again. Okay, so I would really suggest enjoy the laughter of your children and grandchildren. Enjoy cuddling up with your partner at night and watching a movie. Enjoy being here. Because as much darkness as there is on this planet at this moment, there's also equally that much light. And so enjoy it. Enjoy it. The uncomfortable stuff is uncomfortable for a reason. It's meant to get you to shift and move. Go train for a marathon. God, marathon runners are badasses. I just saw something the other day because I follow a lot of marathon runners because they're highly spiritual people. And it was like, what do you call somebody that, it takes them 6 hours to run a marathon? What do you call that person? A marathoner. What do you call the last person to cross the line at a marathon? A marathoner. So just go do something that entices you and awakens your senses. Go take an art class. Go take a writing class. Just enjoy being here. Stop trying to wish your life away. Enjoy this moment. There's no race. There's no race to the finish line, right? Time is eternal. Our souls never die. Our bodies do, but our souls don't. So anyway, you guys, I hope that makes sense. I'm going to be scouring through the Cassiopaean board with my boyfriend and trying to find some more really interesting stuff over these last 30 years that they've talked about that would make kind of some cool videos for us to discuss. So again, I will leave all that stuff down in the description box below for you guys so you can start your journey. I really, please, you guys, educate yourself. Educate yourself. Do your own research. And again, if any of this is confusing, please don't compare your chapter 1 to my chapter 10. I've been doing this for 18 years. For 18 years of my life, I have been in deep study over all of this stuff. Okay, so full time, like this is also my job, like full time in school. Spent many years in India. So don't compare your chapter 1 to my chapter 10. My chapter 1 probably looked a lot like your chapter 1. So enjoy being in chapter 1, enjoy being in chapter 2, enjoy being in chapter 3, enjoy being in chapter 4, enjoy all those chapters. Don't try to compare yourself to somebody who's just been doing it for longer, okay? Don't put yourself in that pecking order. Don't do that. Just enjoy being where you are in the here now moment. All right, you guys, I hope you're having a wonderful day. I will talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.